sources.
Chris's draw is not that good. Chris has mana and a time vault, but it doesn't go anywhere.
Right, and there's not really anything he wants to put on his Mox. I mean, he doesn't really want to put Pact of Negation. He's going to want to use that as a backup to win. You definitely don't want to put one of the Force of Wills because you want to use that, to cast the other Force of Will, or maybe use the Pact and draw another blue card for your second Force.
Yeah,
so,
he probably leads Mox Time Vault Go.
Right, I think that's the likely turn here, and depending on what he draws, obviously. He could draw something like Ancestral.
Rich plays exactly the Delver we expected from him. And yeah, Pyroblast up, Mental Misstep up. Wow, Chris, I kind of like this play from Chris. His hand needs time, right? The biggest problem for his hand is that he could just get run over before he manages to draw into business. And his opponent mulliganed.
Right,
so he goes for the Force of Will.
Against the mulligan, I love it.
But, I mean, he gets punished for it with a Pyroblast pretty severely. That is the worst case scenario. And he's seen the deck list, so he knows Rich has exactly 2 Pyroblasts in his deck list that could punish him for that line.
Right, because if Rich has to force a will there, it's actually not so bad. It leaves Rich with 1 card in hand, but now he's got 2, which is a bigger difference. Now, this is an interesting choice for Chris. Do you want a Gitaxian Probe, or do you want to hold up the blue card for your Force of Will? I like what Chris did. It looks like Chris just passed. There's no reason to play Moxes. But there's no reason to play your Moxes because you can play them any other turn, and it's not like he's going to play a Chalice or a Sphere, and you can get Storm Count. And I don't know if
he doesn't play the Mind's Desire, though. The Storm Count actually doesn't do anything.
There's still no reason, I guess, unless you're going to get Flusterstorm back.
There is a reason to hold him back, and Rich just drew it. It's Dak Faden.
Ooh.
That is the one reason to hold these back.
It's actually excellent. Yeah, Chris made a really heads-up play. He would have had to force a will that Dak Faden had he went like Mox Time Vault.
Totally agree. And instead he doesn't.
Well, yeah, I mean, Rich's not going to just cast the Dak Faden onto the empty board. He'd much rather preordain here, but he would have cast the Dak Faden almost certainly if Chris deployed some artifacts.
And Rich can smell the fact that Chris needs to draw gas, uses his Mental Misstep on a Mirror Gitaxian Probe.
Yeah, that's a really kind of interesting line. You don't usually see that a lot.
No, normally you don't misstep the probe, but here I thought it was a decent play. I mean, obviously it's hard to, he doesn't know Chris's hand. Chris is now going to Chrome Mox so he can preordain, which from Chris's perspective makes sense, but it plays right into this Dak Faden. He no longer has the ability to force a will it.
Right, and then the Dak Faden's going to steal his only blue source of mana, and he's going to be left with...
Or his Time Vault, depending on how Chris plays the rest of this turn.
If Chris deploys the rest of his hand, take his Time Vault.
Dak is indeed the greatest thief in the multiverse.
So we can't see what he...
Tolarian Academy and Voltaic Key. Good grief.
It's almost
as
the win.
they say, is the nuts.
So
yeah, you can't draw them both.
If he leaves them on top and draws the Academy and says go, then if Rich plays Dak Faden and steals the Mox, then he can untap and play Mox, Time Vault, Key, and win the game, assuming Rich doesn't draw permission with this draw phase.
Is he going to play around this Dak Faden as the last card? It seems so easy to just go Mox, Time Vault here, right? Wow, this is a great play from Chris. I'm impressed.
Yeah, I am highly impressed. I mean, this guy's got 1 card. What could go wrong? But again, there's actually no reason to do it right away anyway. You can always do this on your turn. You know your next draw is Key, so you know you're not going to need the extra mana.
Wow. Chris has played this so smart. Now, if you're Rich, you probably just play the Dak and steal the Chrome Mox.
Well, it depends on your draw, obviously. If your draw is like a blank, then you're just going to play the Dak and take his Chrome Mox. Still probably do that with most draws. Actually, since he revealed a card,
it's Ancestral.
This is going to get interesting.
It's pretty straightforward. I mean, you Ancestral yourself and see what happens.
Well, it's whether or not he draws permission or not, I'm saying, for Chris.
Right,
if he doesn't draw permission, Chris just loses the game. He's not going for the Ancestral.
He's going for the Dak instead of the Ancestral.
So now he's just going to lose right at the spot.
When the Belcher deck plays nothing and then plays a naked Chrome Mox, I think Chris's play is correct, and I think Rich's play is correct, but it's not going to work.
Oh, I 100%
Chris is slow rolling those Moxes.
I 100% agree with you.
Completely confused Rich about what he's up to.
If I couldn't see, we can see Chris's hand. If I can't see his hand, I'd much rather steal his only mana source than play Ancestral Recall.
Totally agree.
I believe Chris should lead with the Key here just to make sure that mental misstep. You're likely, he's definitely misstepping your Key if you play it second. Whereas if you play it first, he might not misstep your Key.
Yeah, maybe.
You see what I'm saying or no? Like basically by playing in this order, he 100% missteps your key.
Yeah, I do. I
That's
think
a fact.
Doesn't really matter though. Yeah.
So Pikula played that excellently. I mean, I think he wins most lines unless he just drops his Volt out there naked, which, like I said, if you know your next card is key, there's no reason to actually do that because you're not going to need that mana next turn anyways. And again, that's the benefit of having deck list. Chris knows that there's Dak Faden in Rich's deck. So that's also... Randy, you there? Yeah. We're losing you again.
Chris knows. There's no misplay from Chris there because he knows he only.
What? I'm sorry, we missed that. It cut out. All right, so here's Chris's list. We lost.
I was saying that he knows it's not a misstep in Rich's hand because.
All right, so it looks like Chris has got in his sideboard cards. He's definitely probably bringing in the missteps to combat Rich's permission back. It counters Rich's missteps. It also counters his Ancestral and his Flusterstorm type effects, his Pyroblast. He's definitely bringing in the defense grid. I see those 4 cards coming in. There's no need to bring in any more fast mana, I don't think, like Workshop or Grim Monolith. Leyline of Anticipation is for like the Workshop deck. And you don't want Mystical Tutor, you don't want card disadvantage. So it looks like he's bringing in those 4. The cards he can take out, he's probably going to take out maybe a Diminishing Returns. I don't think that's a card that's really that excellent against permission decks. He might even take out more. You can always kind of trim on the number of your cantrips if you need to find something to get rid of. You might want to get rid of the Memory Jar. Windfall on the draw is not as good because your opponent's going to deploy their hand a lot. Rich is going to get the jump and play like a land, maybe a Mox or a cantrip and a Delver, and then the Windfall is not nearly as good. So I believe, he can easily find some spots to put those 4 cards in between Windfall, possibly a Diminishing Returns, possibly a Tezzeret. Here they are. It looks like Chris is mulliganed to 6. He's got Black Lotus Expedition Map, which gets his Academy. He's got a Misstep, a Preordain, and a Diminishing Terms. He's got a pretty good 6. Rich kept his 7. He's got a Force of Will and some Selection and Preordain. He's got to dig through time with those cantrips and sack lands that he'll be able to cast on about turn 3. So this is two great hands. I believe Rich is going to Preordain on the first turn. Let's see if my spotter can tell me what he's looking at here. So he's looking at a Gush and a Preordain. I personally probably would keep both those cards. You don't necessarily, Gush is going to be great on the 3rd turn if you don't draw another land because you're able to just replay one of those lands. Yep, and he looks like he did. Is he keeping the other Preordain or not? So he's still deciding between both cards. Chris's first turn is interesting. He did keep them both. Chris's first turn is interesting because it looks like to get anything on the board, he's going to have to play his Lotus. But if Rich Force of Wills his Lotus, he's not going to be able to cast anything. But he did draw Mox Jet, which will allow him to play his Expedition Map, but he still needs 2 mana to sacrifice it. So it's going to be interesting if Rich Force of Wills the Lotus. A lot of people don't Force of Will Lotus in situations because they figure they'll Force of Will what you cast with it. But against this kind of Belter deck that's already light on mana, I would totally see myself Force of Willing a Black Lotus out of this deck. So he does lead with the Jet, which increases the chance of not getting his Lotus countered, actually. Still probably will get it countered because Rich is an old school vintage player and he knows what Lotus is capable of doing in that deck. And he knows how bottlenecked on mana the deck can get. So he actually Force of Will getting rid of Snapcaster Mage. With all those Preordains, he doesn't really have a need to Snapcaster. He's got another one in his hand.
He does Force of Will Lotus.
Yeah, I mean, I think against this kind of deck, that's the right play. I think in like a traditional like Delver style deck or something, you might not, but a combo deck that's already light on land source, or mana sources, it seems like the right play. And that means we have you back. Welcome back.
Maybe. I hope so.
So Rich's top card is another preordained, so he's going to look at he kept the preordained on top.
Wow, did Chris draw the Jet?
Yeah, Chris's first draw phase was Jet.
Okay, that helps a lot.
So it looks like he's preordaining and he's seeing Volcanic.
Although he still needs to draw 1 mana to get anything going, doesn't he?
Ooh, so Rich was able to push to the bottom his cards and picked up an Ingot Chewer, which is going to be pretty devastating. Chris was very fortunate to draw another Mox, so now he can actually sack the map and go get Tolarian Academy. He'll have 2 artifacts, which will allow the Academy to produce 2 and play Grim Monolith. So Chris has a couple fortunate draws of those Moxes he's going to be able to develop on the board, which is going to make that Ingot Chewer less painful. It's still going to hurt, but it's not going to totally cripple him, whereas if he didn't draw a mana source that specific turn, his Jet would get Ingot Chewed, and then he'd be 2 mana sources away from cracking that map. All right, so he got the Academy. He played the Grim Monolith. He's got diminishing returns to fill his hand back up and a preordain. So Rich is going to gush here. It's a great play when you don't have another land drop. You can just put one of those lands right back down. So the drawback of returning 2 lands, if you want to call it that, is sort of mitigated is cut in half because you get 1 land drop back. His hand's not very good. He doesn't really have anything to do with the 2 blue mana. He's not going to be able to cast Force of Will because he doesn't have another blue card. It looks like he's just going to be able to play a land, a Mox. If he chooses to play a Mox, he can just tap the land. Oh, forgot about the Dig Through Time. Oops. Yeah, that's a great use of those 2 blue mana. That wasn't actually showing on my screen, so I apologize for that. No, he's had a Dig Through Time in his hand, right? Because he had Dig Through Time, 2 preordains. Yeah, he's had Dig Through Time, so I just didn't see it. Sorry about that, guys. So yeah, Dig Through Time is going to net him in this kind of spot is great because, you need a blue card for your Force of Will. You could use a threat. So he's looking at, looks like Pyromancer, another Dig Through Time, Force of Will, a land, a Misstep, a Probe, and a Delver. So he's got a Force of Will in his hand. He's got no mana floating, but he's got the Moxes. I kind of like taking Pyromancer and a Force of Will. You're able to deploy Mox, Pyromancer, and then have Force of Will back. But you don't actually have to take Force of Will. You can take a different blue card so that you have the option to either pitch it to the current Force of Will, and if you end up not needing to pitch it, then you can use the blue card to cast whatever blue spell you want. So let's see what Rich decides to take. So he took Dig Through Time and Force of Will. So he wants a blue card and to have backup. He can use Force of Will with one of his blue cards. He can dig and maybe find more gas if he gets his graveyard built up enough. Once he plays this land, he'll be two delve or 2 mana away, but with the Ingot Chewer, he's only 1 away now. So actually, I think I would have taken maybe Dig Through Time and Pyromancer, but then I would have to use my Dig Through Time when I cast Force of Will, whereas Rich is going to be able to cast Force of Will using Force of Will and then play a land and dig again. So Key is free when you have to layer an Academy out because it costs 1 mana, but your Academy generates 1 more mana. And now he's casting Preordain. Looks like he's looking at another Diminishing Returns, which he's putting on top, I think. And I think it's right to put a second Diminishing Returns on top because it's likely against a deck with that much permission, your first one's going to get countered. So you'd like to be able to have a backup if it does get countered so that, once the next turn you can just cast it again, which it forces Rich to have sort of 2 permission spells. Looks like we're going to be joined, since Randy's having problems, by my man, Eric Froelich. Did you see what he, do we know what he did with the preordain? That's okay, no problem. I'm pretty certain I saw that there was a diminishing returns, and I'm pretty certain Chris has put that on top. I mean, it seems like the obvious right play to have a backup if your first diminishing returns gets countered.
Anyone want to catch me up on this one?
Oh, Eric's here. So Chris won a really quick first game. He played perfect, didn't play any artifacts. Rich tapped out with one card in hand, and Chris was able to play Mox, Academy, Vault, Key, and just win the game. And here we are where Chris mulliganed. Rich has a handful of permission, and Chris is able to cast diminishing returns, and if it gets countered, I believe his next card is another diminishing returns.
Oh, wow, these hands looked... That's a good hand for Rich Shay. 3
No, yeah.
Pretty good in this matchup.
Rich just drew another Force of Will, which allowed him to be able to cast Force of Will twice. And then now he drew Wear Tear, which actually is just Wear. There are no enchantments that I know of in Chris's deck. So it's pretty amazing that he's got... What were you saying, Ephro?
So just Shatter?
Yeah, so he's got Shatter, and he's got 2 Force of Wills. It looks like Chris did not keep the second diminishing returns, and he's not casting this one.
Is it not?
So Rich has drawn Brainstorm. I actually feel that by Chris not keeping the diminishing returns on top and then casting the one the next turn and then having another one, even though it would not have worked, what he's allowing Rich to do is build up a handful of permission, which is going to be really hard for Chris to fight through. I mean, if you look at this hand Rich has right now, I don't really see Chris being able to get through it. He's got 3 counter spells that he's not going to have to cast all in one turn, so he's going to be able to refill with other blue cards. He's got a Dig Through Time to get more gas. He's got 2 artifact destruction spells, and he's got a preordain. So,
yeah, I think my plan, if I'm Rich Shay, is just hard cast an Ingot Chewer and sit behind 3 Force of Wills and just let them go to town.
100% agree. It's funny. People don't realize how often in Vintage, hard cast Ingot Chewer is actually a real thing, and a lot of decks have trouble beating that. I mean, a 3/3 goes a long way towards doing 20 damage, and he's only got to do 18 to Chris, so it's actually 6 turns.
It's true. Yeah, with Dig Through Time, able to refuel too as the last card you're looking to pitch. It's hard. It's just hard to get through that wall. There are just too many. There's too many cards that are basically air because, of course, you know, in most cases that would just be land cards, but in this case, Pikula's deck, you know, they're going to be artifacts. They need to turn on the other effects. There's only 1 land, so. Yeah, you're going to draw a bunch of maps and Moxes that aren't going to do very much.
So Rich actually made an interesting play. He cast Wear on the Mox Jet, which I don't know if I really love because it doesn't look like Chris is that bottlenecked for mana, whereas I actually might like to get the Voltaic Key because that way you don't even... If you somehow lose a Counter War over a Time Vault, you just don't lose. Right. He's probably not losing Counter Wars anytime soon, but I don't really see that Mox having as much an effect as the Key could have.
Well, the Pikula deck, I mean, the counters are Force of Will, which requires an additional card, and Pact, which of course is going to require him to then pay, should he not be able to win in 1 turn. He's very far away from having the mana needed to cast Belcher and use it. It requires 7, so yeah, it's hard to win a counter war, even though, you know, the Blue Belcher deck is resilient. It does have counters. It can win a counter war, but it generally needs to win on the spot, and once you're down to like 4 cards, Force of Will becomes less of an option, and if you don't have 7 mana available on the spot, Pact of Negation is not necessarily going to do much.
Well, actually, I like Rich's play if he's going to do what he did. He wasn't waiting to hard cast Ingot Chewer. He also just cast the Ingot Chewer to get rid of the other mana, so he totally bottlenecked him for what he thought. Chris was able to play sort of some of these useless artifacts in his hand, like a Chrome Mox with no imprint and another map if he wants, to sort of enable mana anyways. But I really don't understand why he's been holding the diminishing returns for as long as he had. I mean, he had a window where we know...
I think he's trying to build up some kind of counters.
Yes. There was a period, though, where Rich only had 1 counter, and he may not have had a counter, and I think it would have been right to go for it, and Chris could have left the diminishing return on top for his next draw phase, so that if it was Force of Willed, he would be able to untap and cast another. Turns out, Rich would have... Yeah. What's that?
The problem with casting it when your opponent's short on cards is they also get to draw the 7. So, you know, obviously the deck needs to do it. It's an all-in deck, and he already has Academy out. But, there are risks to go with the rewards of casting diminishing returns. If you can't win on the spot, you may just be setting yourself up to never be able to win. Whereas if you can draw, maybe one more spell, you might be able to force it through. I'm not positive on that.
Yeah, no, it's just the kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't thing with diminishing returns against a deck with permission. A lot of the times, if you wait too long, you can't really resolve it. But if you cast it too early, you fill their hand up too. So it's a delicate balance when you're playing a deck like this to figure out when you should go for it or not. And I'm not claiming to be any expert. I could easily be wrong. I haven't played the deck, and Chris played excellent last game, and he's played more games with the deck, so I'm going to trust his instincts on when to make the plays with his deck.
Yeah, I mean, my theory, I guess, again, in the same position as you, as I have not played the deck, is that potentially he was saving the diminishing turns to then be the bait spell later on, not necessarily that was the one he wanted to resolve, so that he was hoping to cast diminishing returns, maybe get that countered, maybe cast something more powerful, like a Tezzeret, to get that through to just kind of win the game on the spot. I'm not sure. I could be wrong.
But what is good for Chris is that Rich has not deployed a threat, although this Dak Faden is going to be able to steal things as kind of a passive threat. But he didn't have an aggressive threat to sort of put the game away by choosing to not cast Ingot Chewer, hard cast it, and not playing a Pyromancer or the Delver that he forced the willed away. He's giving Chris time to actually come up with a game plan and do something. Had he had a threat out here, all these turns that Chris is not doing anything would, eventually he's just going to lose the game.
Stealing the Mox Opal and actually has it turned on with the only artifacts in his deck, I imagine.
Someone said I'll have to put a quarter in the jar. Did I swear that I wasn't supposed to? And I know I'm not supposed to, but did I say something? Sorry.
I missed it.
Unless they're talking about the damned if you do, damned if you don't, but I don't think that really counts. That's kind of a saying.
Well, Rich looked like he was in some pretty good positions against this deck last week and didn't win all those games, so I guess this game is not over, though he is in commanding lead. I think at this point he's going to hardcast the Chewer.
I hope so, but he might still, I don't know why he wouldn't want to tap out. The only counter that you can cast.
Well, yeah, it would have been better if he kept double misstep, I suppose.
Ugh.
Well, the problem is you can't give this deck too much time, although having a Planeswalker in play certainly makes things a lot easier. It's going to take an amazing sequence for Pikula to win this game. I am not sure exactly what his best draw is. I imagine it's like a Mind's Desire. Does he have that?
Actually, he doesn't play the Mind's Desire. Randy does.
Sideboard either, though? Not in the sideboard?
Nope.
I knew he didn't have it in the main, but I mean, obviously that's the best thing you could have, where you can just cast some of these do-nothing artifacts. Although he is really far away from having that much mana. He has 2 mana, I believe.
Right. Yeah, he's got 2 mana.
He can get up to 3. A bad Comox.
Now, if he could somehow resolve Time Twister here, but we all know that there's no way that's resolving.
Right. Yeah, just getting more and more buried. Mystical Tutor being down a card, using Chrome Mox to be down a card. Although I guess it is basically a Mox Sapphire with Academy in play.
Yeah, this is getting pretty ugly. Although, I was going to say Rich could run out of counters if he just draws pretty badly, but he's also got a Dak Faden to allow him to sort of cycle. If he draws too many lands, he can just draw 2 and discard.
Or if he draws too many Ingot Chewers.
Yeah, I really wish he had to put an Ingot Chewer into play just so he could kind of put Chris out of his misery a lot faster.
Yeah, well, this game would be over. Not to say that this game is not pretty over.
So it looks like you made it back home, back in Vegas, after a successful birthday Pro Tour weekend.
Yeah, I literally just got off the plane, you can tell. Cheon stole my razor. So,
that's a pretty nice looking beard, man. Pretty nice looking beard.
It's getting out of control. Yeah, this was a good week. I Nothing against this week. Just need to cap it off by continuing to run hot, this time against Randy.
Yeah, that's it. The whole week. It's like me. You're only as good as your latest match, man. My whole week can be great, and then I lose a match of Vintage Super League, and
my last match
life tilt. Huh?
My last match was a loss.
Yeah, well, even your birthday.
My previous 30 were mostly wins, though. So.
All right, so it looks like Rich is doing a little card selection here. There's no artifacts he wants to steal. Not worth stealing compared to finding some gas in your hand.
Still just not interested in this young Jeezy, huh?
Yeah, it's really bizarre that he doesn't want to have any permanents, like any creatures, any sources of damage.
Like I wouldn't want the young Pyromancer over the Forces, the Misstep, or the Pyroblast, but over the Wear Tear I would have kept it, especially with Dak Vaden in play and your opponent has no cards in hand. It's just
maybe we'll get a hardcast Ingature here. Chris has no cards, right?
No cards.
So you've got one Force of Will, which is all you need.
It's just going to discard the Ingature, I imagine.
Yeah. Oh my God.
That's fine.
Okay, he has a Pyromancer. He has a Pyromancer. All right.
It's got instant speed Ingature if you're not going to hardcast them. So. Wow.
Rich could deck himself. He's got 17 cards in his deck.
No.
Pyromancer. If he didn't play that Pyromancer there, though, he actually might be in jeopardy of that happening. No.
I'll take
I'm just trying to entertain the possibility of a way that Chris can get out of this.
That would be great to get to see someone misclick their way into a decked lost. Just, this game's over. Oh, wait, I can't draw 3?
Newly restricted Treasure Cruise.
That happened to Cuneo in the limited portion. His opponent cast Defiant Strike for the loss. I think he was going for lethal damage, but had no cards in his library.
Wow, well, I guess he was going to die anyways then, huh? His opponent.
I don't know the full story, but either way, it was interesting.
Yeah, no, but if you have to cast it for lethal and you have no deck, then it sounds like you just are going to die next turn, unless Cuneo himself also had no deck and you could pass and let him deck himself.
I'm not sure if it was Xaxes 1 point of damage or exactly the story, but either way.
Yeah. If it was for just the overkill, then it's actually a little ridiculous.
Well, I like our chances of having a game 3 here.
Yeah, I wish they would just get to it. Chris has got some pride here, but I'm up against this board. I'm just going to right-click concede and go to the next game.
Oh yeah, I mean, especially if it's my birthday, and I can actually.
You know how lucky Chris is. I'm pretty sure it's also his son. I'm pretty sure it's his son's birthday because I was jealous that he had a kid on his birthday, and another Pro Tour player friend of mine, Igor Freeman, had his child on his birthday. And I was like, how do all these guys get to have their kids on their birthday?
You just gotta plan it.
I was hoping my daughter would stay in there 4 extra months.
Yeah, you just missed, man. Sorry.
Chris finally surrenders. He's finally had enough.
Well, I mean, it was still anyone's game.
All right, so we're going to go to the sideboarding for game 3. I'm going to make it a little larger so I can check it out here. Let's see. So we've got the deck list up. So it looks like Rich brought in the Wear Tears and the Ingature and the Pyroblast. No need for anything else. Doesn't really even need a mountain. His mana's not getting constricted. So he brought in 4, 5, 6, probably 7 cards. Cards he took out, definitely Lightning Bolts. Those are useless. Fire Ice, that's 4. Probably some number of creatures, maybe Snapcaster Mage.
He may actually have boarded out a land. He's playing more mana sources than the average deck, so he doesn't have something like Strip Mine. The Delver decks, I guess, usually run closer to 14 land, so it wouldn't be inconceivable for him to go down a land. I'm not sure if that's something he would actually do or not. The bolts, obviously, they don't do anything.
Yeah, I mean, the way he just didn't seem to want to play creatures, it seems like if you're going to sideboard, then you might as well sideboard out a few Delvers or a few. I mean, you probably don't want to sideboard out a Delver because it's nicer to play one on turn 1 and get a threat going. But the way he played the game, you could probably board out a Snapcaster, a Pyromancer, or something like that too.
Yeah, some number of Pyromancers certainly can make sense. Snapcasters, they do turn on 1-mana counters, which are very real. All right.
All right, so let's look at these hands. Chris has got a really robust hand. He can play a first turn time twister. He doesn't have any permission to back it up other than a mental misstep. And Rich Shay has a powerful double force of will hand that can deploy a Delver or a Preordain if it wants. So unfortunately for Chris, well, it's not actually unfortunate. He's going to trade one card for two, which is fine because then he allows you to get your future threats out. And with this probe, he gets to see that.
Yeah, I mean, it really depends when he draws off this probe. The problem is, of course, in printing something on Chrome Mox, if he doesn't draw, like let's say he draws a complete blank and he wants to play Chrome Mox, if he ends up pitching the mental misstep, he has no defense for the Delver, and he's going to be facing down another Force of Will with no action card. So he does want to draw something off this probe. Mana Crypt, well, it means that he can hold mental misstep, but he's still on a clock if he plays Mana Crypt.
Yeah, he's actually on his own clock with the Mana Crypt because he can get away with Opal, Mana Crypt, Emerald. Then I don't know if you actually want to, but you can tap the Opal and then play your next Opal, assume so that in anticipation of your Time Twister resolving, you'll have that mana floating and you don't throw away that card. But then if your Time Twister is countered, you kind of just burned off one of your Opal Lotus Petal hybrid cards. So,
well, he knows Time Twister's getting countered. He just saw 3 Force of Wills.
Oh, the probe resolved. So yeah, I think here it's a question of do you want to have that Mana Crypt out clocking you for on average 1.5 points a turn? I don't think you do.
Yeah, what's the other option? You just say go, right?
When you could play it with you can either say go or you can play it off with Chrome Mox, getting rid of misstep, but then you don't have misstep for the Delver either. So
right, what ends up happening is you get your Time Twister Force pitching Force. Your opponent plays Delver, still has Force of Will, and you have no spell in your hand that does anything. So you're multiple spells away from doing anything. But I mean, that's just kind of the hand he has. So I think he might actually just go with the Mana Crypt, as it's actually less of a clock than the Delver.
No, I 100% agree.
It also leaves Chrome Mox in his hand for future shenanigans. I don't know.
Yeah, and there's no reason to play anything else. You can just cast the Time Twister. You don't need to pop off the Mox because you're pretty sure it's countered. And if it's not countered, you're willing to say, okay, I ditched a mana because my card didn't get countered. But there's no way Rich doesn't counter this. So
yeah, it's always getting countered. You don't just let your opponent draw 4 when you have a very good hand.
Yeah, of course. So this is going to leave Rich with a situation of what to pitch. I presume he's going to pitch one of the Force of Wills.
Yeah. That's what I would imagine.
Because it's unlikely you're going to end up having...
Yeah, I mean, it could be Preordain where, you're playing Delver and you're prepared to pitch Preordain anyway. Wouldn't have been my choice, but...
Yeah, I think I would have got rid of the
Force
of Will. Because I'm probably not casting triple Force of Will.
But I would like to be able to cast Preordain to be able to find my, awesome cards.
Yeah, my Ingot Chewer or a Wear Tear that he happened to draw this turn, but now
Academy's a great draw, even though he still has no gas, but it does give him all the mana in the world, so he can cast everything basically for the rest of the game. This Wear Tear is actually doing nothing against Chris's particular draw, since Mana Crypt is something you never want to kill, and he actually has a backup Mox Opal.
It's actually kind of great for Chris not to play the Academy. No, since Rich doesn't have a Strip Mine and Chris doesn't have any more lands in his deck, there's no reason to play it. But by not playing it, it makes him seem like he has less mana than he really has, and he might bait out some artifact removal from Rich. Rich might be like, oh, I can bottleneck his mana. Let me cast this Wear Tear on one of his artifacts, and then Chris can explode with the Academy. So it's kind of a good reason to not play your Academy. And look what's happening here. Rich is trying to constrain his mana. He's like, oh, I turn off his Mox. I get rid of his Emerald. He's got no colored mana. Whereas had Chris played the Academy, he probably saves that Wear Tear.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Although I do think that was for sure a good play to kill that Mox.
Oh, of course.
With his hand or not.
Oh, yeah. Either way, they become it happens. So now Chris is going to... It's going to be a game where we've got a guy with basically 3 mana. It's a top deck war. They're both going to have nothing. And Chris has the mana advantage and the more robust cards. And Rich has cards he can draw. He's going to draw things like Pyromancer, Preordain, which are good. But Chris is able to rip a diminishing return and just get right back in this game. So I think this spot here favors Chris.
Yeah, I mean, Rich is hoping to draw his Ancestral and Treasure Cruise type cards, or Dak Phaeton.
Or Dig Through Time, which would be fantastic.
Treasure Cruise type cards. Chris has taken 6 damage now from this Mana Crypt, though.
Yeah, even if he finds Time Bolt, he's still got to find a way to win before that Mana Crypt kills him.
That's a good point. Yeah, that is real.
Rich really needs to draw a cantrip. Ooh, Mental Misstep is a turn too late for that Voltaic key. And Chris just keeps drawing Dead Moxes too. So this is interesting. It's really just a top deck where, ooh, Ingot Chewer is a good one. It's interesting if Rich decides to kill the key or not, because if he doesn't kill the key, then Time Bolt is a top deck that pseudo kills him, assuming that Mana Crypt doesn't. So that's kind of a reason to want to kill the key now, because you're naked to Time Bolt.
Yep. Truth.
And he doesn't cast it, which is really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to get that threat. He's looking to hard cast it.
Yeah, I guess he's figuring if he goes one turn without it and I do brick on and draw land again, I can get a 3/3 out there, and that combined with the Mana Crypt will end the game. So he's looking for
permission. It's not going to take many turns with Pikula at 10, but I mean, Rich Shay basically has no protection.
So he put a Scalding Tarn on the bottom, and ooh, there's a Gush. He's keeping the Gush. So now he gets to look at 2 more cards here, and he gets to float mana. Let's see what he gets here. He got a Misstep and another Gush. Now this is interesting. Do you really want to go down to 1 land to find 2 more cards? I think you might have to find some permission.
No, I don't think so. I think you just play the Ingot Chewer and pass, and you still can play Gush at instant speed.
Well, he can't play the Ingot Chewer.
He can evoke.
Oh, evoke. I thought you
kill the key.
Yeah, actually cast. Well, if he didn't kill the key last turn, I don't think he's going to kill the key this turn. I don't.
Oh,
maybe
now he's behind on lands. Like now he's never going to hard cast the Ingot Chewer. So it makes a lot more sense now than it would have.
That is true, and he is going to evoke it. Let's see if he kills the key. That's his only real target out there because he has plenty of mana. Yeah. And this way, now he doesn't lose the top deck of a Time Bolt.
Well, he's not. Yeah, he's never hard casting Ingot Chewer at this point.
Chris wins a flip and draws Tinker. Wow. So if 1 turn later, he would have had the Time Vault key, and then he would have just had to find Belcher before his Mana Crypt. But I believe he finds Belcher now and just wins the game anyways.
Yeah, he just wins the game on the spot.
So yeah, I forgot about Belcher was even in the deck, because last game we never saw one in game 1. He just key vaulted and Rich conceded. So Tinker for Belcher. Get rid of the Mana Crypt, just in case it doesn't resolve. So it kind of serves double duty. But if it does resolve, which we know it will, because Rich's hand is all land and Mental Misstep, this game is over.
So the Belcher deck wins again.
Belcher deck 4-0. Chris is 2-0, and Randy is 2-0 with the Belcher deck. Activate Belcher. Show him your deck, and you go to -28.
Hold on, let's keep the deck on the screen. I'm about to play against this. The exact same matchup. Ooh boy.
I believe Rich had the same matchup. He had to play Randy last week. Poor Rich. That's not a good matchup for him, I don't think, and he has to play it twice in a row. That's really unfortunate the way these pairings work.
Yeah, he looked super far ahead last week, and there are a couple of different lines he could have taken that would have made it interesting. I don't know if he would have won or not, but yeah, it's a bad matchup. I mean, that deck is very good against Delver. It's kind of why it exists, I feel like. What do we got coming up next? All right, so quick break. We have Bob and Kai.
Finally, we get Kai booed on camera against the great one himself, Bob Maher. 2 Hall of Fames players, 2 of the best in the game, going at it, vintage. Super exciting.
I hype them as 2 slouches of the game, but I guess Titans works too. They're decent.